The image the whole world has of Paris is that of a true dream, a city full of historic buildings, works of art scattered throughout the streets, and charming avenues where elegant people stroll leisurely. And let's face it, that side really does exist. Walking along the banks of the River Seine, admiring Notre Dame and savoring a warm croissant while watching Parisians come and go is part of the unique experience that only Paris can offer. But it's not all flowers or fresh croissants. While tourists crowd the Champs-Élysées, take selfies at the Arc de Triomphe, or devour macarons at Galeries Lafayette, there is a Paris that doesn't usually appear in travel guides. Robberies, scams, violence, prostitution, and even a kind of crackland. And of course, we mustn't forget the rats that circulate freely in every corner of the city. Are you ready to discover the other side of the French capital? Then come with us, because today Bello Mundo is going to show you the dark alleys of the City of Light. Number 1. Rats everywhere. And while we're on the subject, it's only fair to start our list with these not-so-illustrious residents of the City of Light. You know that scene from the movie Ratatouille, with the cute and talented little rat who becomes a chef in Paris? Well, the reality of Parisians and rats living together is a little, or a lot, less cute than in the animation. Scenes like this one, where a rat wanders everywhere in the Paris metro, climbs on sleeping passengers, or hitches a ride on dogs, have gone viral on the internet. Yes, they are everywhere and are as much a part of the Parisian scene as the Eiffel Tower. And the most curious thing, nobody is scared or seems to care. Paris's relationship with rats goes back a long way. During the Middle Ages, they were feared as transmitters of the bubonic plague, which decimated thousands of lives. In the 19th century, during the siege of Paris in the Franco-Prussian War, starving Parisians even ate rats to survive. And believe it or not, at the time, tanneries used the rodent's skin to make fine gloves for the elite. It's estimated that Paris has around 6 million rats. That's 3 times as many rodents as people. Today, the city is trying to deal with the infestation in a different way, relying on so-called peaceful cohabitation, with less aggressive control measures. But the truth is that the rats are still out there, ready to take advantage of any carelessness. And when garbage accumulates, they have a party. Garbage collection strikes are common in Paris, and it only takes one stoppage for the streets to be covered in plastic bags. A veritable paradise for rodents. In 2023, a prolonged strike left unsuspecting tourists with scenes straight out of a horror movie. Some streets were practically impassable, and even tourist areas, such as the Champs-Élysées, became strongholds for hungry rodents. For some Parisians, rats are already part of the landscape. In many cafes and restaurants, it's normal to see one running past, and the waiters don't even bother to disguise it. Faced with the difficulty of controlling the infestation, Paris has come up with an unusual solution, an app to map rat sightings. It works like a rodent Waze. People can report in real time the places where they have seen one, helping the city council to target combat actions. As soon as the app was launched, reports exploded. It became clear that rats aren't limited to sewers and dark alleys. They're in the trendiest neighborhoods, the subways, and even iconic tourist spots. Number 2. Pickpockets and scams everywhere. Now let's talk about a problem that many people ignore until it's too late. The scams that run rampant in Paris, especially against unsuspecting tourists. Have you ever heard of the famous pickpockets? If you've done any research on tourism in Europe, this term has certainly come up at some point. It refers to pickpockets, those discreet thieves who, in the blink of an eye, disappear with your cell phone, wallet, or passport. And in Paris, they are everywhere, especially in the busiest tourist spots, such as the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre Museum, the Champs-Élysées, Notre Dame Cathedral, and even inside the metro. The strategy is simple. They observe those who are distracted, usually someone amazed by the city, checking their map or cell phone. When the metro stops and the doors open, the thief acts quickly. He pulls out whatever is easy to take and runs off before the victim realizes what has happened. The door closes, the train continues its journey, and that's the end of the story. But the scams don't stop there. There's also the classic cup scam, that street trick where someone shuffles a ball under 3 cups and challenges the curious to find it. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. All around, there are accomplices pretending to win in order to attract more victims. And in the end, the tourist always loses, whether it's their wallet or any other item the thieves think is valuable. Another very common scam takes place inside metro stations. Fake uniformed inspectors take advantage of the confusion in busy places, such as the station leading to Disney Paris. They approach tourists who don't know exactly how the ticketing system works and, pretending to help, charge absurd fees to release the ticket. And anyone going up to Montmartre or visiting the Sacré-Cœur Basilica should beware of the wristband scam. A nice guy comes up to you and ties a thread bracelet around your wrist, saying it's a gift. It seems harmless, but once the bracelet is on, he demands money to release it. If you refuse, the atmosphere can become tense. And the tip to avoid these headaches: avoid interactions with strangers who are too kind. Number 3. Pollution of the River Seine. It's almost impossible to talk about Paris without mentioning the River Seine. It cuts through the city, embellishes postcards, and is the scene of romantic cruises that make anyone sigh. But behind this enchanting scenery, the river has been suffering for decades from a much less glamorous reality: pollution. And it's no wonder that for decades, not even your feet could get wet in these waters, because it was forbidden. Until the authorities came up with a bold idea for the Olympics. With the 2024 Olympic Games just around the corner, Paris City Hall decided to tackle the problem head-on. Millions of dollars were invested in trying to make the waters of the Seine suitable for swimming, as some competitions were due to take place there. The idea was so ambitious that Mayor Anne Hidalgo even took a symbolic dip to show her confidence in the cleanup efforts. But in practice, it was a different story. The high levels of bacteria, especially the dreaded E. coli, which can cause serious infections, caused events to be postponed and even cancelled. To make matters worse, some athletes who ventured into the waters came out of it feeling ill, and some were hospitalized, which only increased the criticism and distrust of the population. The problem is that you can't solve decades of neglect with short-term solutions. Even with improvements to the sewage system, all it takes is a heavy rain to overload the network and dump waste directly into the river. And we're not just talking about sewage. Oil, chemical waste, and tons of household garbage also contribute to the problem. Some activists have even organized protests, mocking the cleanup project and calling the situation a bath of illusion. After all, swimming in the Seine is still a risk, and not one worth taking. Number 4. Crackland in Paris. If you think that only cities like São Paulo or Los Angeles face the problem of large-scale drug use, you'd better brace yourself. Paris, the city of light, also has its own version of crackland, and the reality there is frightening. And if you haven't checked it out yet, we have 2 unmissable videos that show the dark side of big cities. The dark side of São Paulo, where we reveal the behind-the-scenes of São Paulo's Cracolandia, a real drug war camp, and what's it like to be poor in the United States, the brutal impoverishment of the middle class, showing the devastating scenario of Skid Row, the region where thousands live in shacks, immersed in poverty, drugs, prostitution, and violence. You won't believe what we found there. But back to Paris. Places like Porte de la Chapelle and Porte de la Villette in the north of the city have become veritable concentration points for drug addicts. The scene is chilling, streets overrun with people wandering around in garbage, consuming crack in the open and sleeping in makeshift tents. And all of this happens under the eyes of Parisians and tourists, who often have no idea that this dark side of the city exists. The police even try to take action, organizing major cleanup operations to remove the stalls and disperse the users. But a few weeks later, they return, occupying new spaces and creating a domino effect that seems to have no end. And the impact on residents' lives is enormous. There are constant reports of thefts, threats, and insecurity, not to mention local businesses, which suffer from the drop in traffic. And the worst thing of all? Many say that the government is more concerned with hiding the problem than actually solving it. NGOs and activists criticize the police operations as actions for show, since there are no effective public policies to offer treatment and social reintegration. Number 5. Homeless people and tents on the sidewalks. Paris is expensive. This phrase may sound obvious, but for many, the cost of living in the City of Light is not just high, it's unsustainable. In various parts of the city, especially near the River Seine, large avenues, and even in central areas, tarpaulin and plastic tents make up the scene of those who have lost the battle against exorbitant prices. These makeshift camps are home to a mixture of stories and difficulties. On the one hand, there are illegal immigrants who arrive in France in search of a better life and end up with nowhere to stay. On the other, there are French people who, for a variety of reasons, unemployment, financial problems, or personal crises, simply can't keep up with the pace of one of the world's most expensive cities. Despite the work of NGOs that offer food, shelter, and, in some cases, try to help with social relocation, the truth is that the problem is bigger than the initiatives can solve. The local government, however, seems to view these homeless people selectively. For most of the year, they are practically invisible. But all it takes is one big event, such as a fashion show or the recent Olympics, for the authorities to take action. And just as with Cracklandia, this is when the movement known as the cleanup takes place. The tents are removed, the residents evicted, and the problem, although not solved, is pushed away from the eyes of tourists and TV cameras. Number 6. Prostitution and human trafficking. Do you know what else isn't on TV? The areas where prostitution is very visible. Areas like the Bois de Boulogne and Bois de Vincennes, which during the day are charming parks for picnics and walks, at night turn into real prostitution centers, and often with stories involving human trafficking. These areas end up being ignored by most tourists, as few venture there at night. But for those who know the reality, the situation is alarming. Amidst the darkness, there are women, many of them victims of criminal networks, trying to survive. It's not uncommon to hear reports of extreme exploitation, physical violence, and even the presence of minors, which highlights the seriousness of the problem. NGOs and advocacy groups have been denouncing the inhumane conditions faced by these people for years. They often live in a cycle of near slavery, controlled by pimps and threatened on a daily basis. Despite some initiatives to combat the problem, the actions are limited and insufficient to dismantle the networks that take advantage of the vulnerability of others. Number 7. Rising crime. Despite still being considered one of the most desirable capitals in the world, crime rates in the Parisian capital have been on the rise, and the numbers don't lie. In 2002, Paris recorded more than 300,000 incidents of petty crime, such as thefts and robberies, while homicides rose by 8%, sexual violence increased by 11%, and violent robberies with weapons rose by 2%. A recent and shocking example of this happened in November of 2024, when a 25-year-old Brazilian makeup artist reported that she had been the victim of a brutal robbery and attempted sexual assault in Paris. She was staying with two friends in an apartment rented through Airbnb when, on the last night of the trip, the property was invaded by 7 armed men. The invasion took place when the victims, believing that a friend was returning to the apartment, opened the door and were surprised by 7 armed men. The group came in shouting and physically assaulted them with slaps, punches, and even gunshots. In the midst of the chaos, one of them was hit on the head with a gun while trying to calm the situation down, while another was threatened with death by one of the invaders, who even pointed the gun in her direction. The most desperate moment was when the criminals tried to rip the clothes off the 2 young women. Fortunately, the unexpected arrival of the third friend, who started calling several times, scared off the robbers. They left the scene in a hurry, taking cell phones, cards, cash, around 900 euros and other personal items from the victims. But the trauma didn't end there. Desperate, the young women ran to the nearest metro station to ask for help. A woman who witnessed the situation called the police, who took them to the station. There, the victims faced another kind of violence, prejudice and a lack of empathy from the French authorities. According to the young woman, the police treated them as suspects rather than victims. During questioning, when they found gynecological drugs and condoms in their suitcases, they insinuated that they were prostitutes. As if that wasn't enough, when they returned to the apartment after the forensic examinations, they were thrown out by the owner, who claimed security reasons for canceling the reservation and sending them away. This case, unfortunately, is not isolated. There are many other reports that are the same or worse than the Brazilian women's. Number 8. Prejudice and xenophobia. Boring, nosy, stuck up. That's the reputation Parisians have. And you know what's funniest? Even French people from other regions think that of them. But the issue goes beyond antipathy or a lack of warm smiles. Racism and xenophobia are very real problems in the French capital. In fact, to be fair, the French in general don't have a very good reputation in this regard. A report by the National Consultative Commission on Human Rights, CNCDH, revealed that in 2022, the tolerance index in France was below 70, on a scale that goes up to 100. This is an improvement on previous years, but it's far from ideal. Now, as a metropolis, Paris's problems end up standing out more than in the rest of the country. In the city, those most affected by prejudice are Maghrebians, Arabs from North Africa, Muslims, blacks, and gypsies. These groups face everything: stares, difficulties in the job market, daily discrimination, and, in the most extreme cases, physical violence. To get an idea of the intensity and seriousness of this prejudice, in December of 2022, an attack shocked the city. A man broke into a Kurdish cultural center and killed 3 people, motivated by hatred of foreigners. For those who don't know, the Kurds are an ethnic group spread across countries like Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. Many leave their homelands because of conflicts and persecution and seek refuge in France. But, as this case shows, they don't always get the welcome they expected. Even with all the diversity that Paris has to offer, prejudice is still a shadow that the City of Light can't lighten. And that concludes our journey through this less glamorous side of Paris. But now we want to hear from you. What did you think of getting to know this other side of the city? Did any of these stories surprise you or change your view of the place? And don't forget, subscribe to Bello Mundo and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content about incredible destinations and the realities that travel guides leave out. Thank you very much, and see you next time.